Hi, everyone. Sean here with Logos, and welcome to the live training. Hey, thanks so much for attending one of my sessions. I really do appreciate the time you are investing in this because I count it a privilege to be even a small part of your Logos learning process. I have about 28 years of pastoral experience, and I've used Logos for preaching, teaching, Bible study, seminary classes, and more. So I'm just here to help you learn what I have learned. So let's go ahead and begin by practicing using the chat. And let us know in the chat area there, please, how long have you been using Logos? Now, if you're brand new to the live training format, you should be able to find a little box there on your end that says type your message here with a send button. And when you respond there, that'll let me know you're hearing me. Things are basically going okay on your end. Plus, you might want to use that chat during the webinar. So please feel free to do so. For now, though, just let us know in the chat area, please. How long have you been using Logos? And everyone, please take note of who the newest to Logos is. You might want to give them a special welcome to the Logos community. Well, today we're going to talk about how you can prepare expository sermons with workflows. And the key word is workflows. As you well know from the description of the webinar, we are focusing in on the workflows that are built into Logos that will actually help you step by step to prepare an expository sermon from beginning to end. So if you want to have expert advice on what to do, how to do it in Logos, and when to do it in, for example, preparing an expository sermon, then the workflows are going to be perfect for you. Plus, you're going to be able to utilize them after the webinar. Okay. Now, as we get started here, let's make the most of this time. I'm going to give you about 30 minutes of content, followed by about 15 minutes of Q&A. So if you have a question during the webinar, please ask it, but don't put it in chat because I might miss it there later. Switch over to Q&A, put your question there, and then it will be ready for me at the end. And please stick around for our Q&A time. Also, you will get a full recording of the webinar today, so watch for an email within a few hours with the link to that. If you don't get it by tomorrow, then please email me, and I will make sure that you do. My email address is in the light blue note there on your end. Notice it, sean.grubb@logos.com. Plus, if you want to check out my other live trainings, you'll notice there that you can visit logos.com/Sean Grubb. Again, all that information is right there on your end in the light blue note. Okay. And then finally, please do me a big favor and fill out that survey. I would be honored if you would do that for me. That's going to be your way to help me serve you better in the future. Now, it's only going to take you a minute or less, but that feedback is going to be valuable to me and my entire team. In fact, every time you give us a positive survey response, you are supporting our webinar agenda. So please help us to continue to do this for you. Well, today I'm going to get you started with workflow basics and expository sermon basics, okay? Now, once you get to the workflow, once you know how to use the workflow, and I give you a couple of examples of the parts of the workflow, then really you're going to be able to take it from there. So I'm just getting you started with these things. The expository sermon basics are worked into the workflow. So it's kind of like having an expert on expert sermon, on expository sermon prep in the room with you, telling you what to do, when to do it, and how to do it in Logos. You just need to follow the steps that expert is giving you. And again, it's the workflow. So we want to make sure you know how to take advantage of that. Now, as we get started here, I love what Brian Chappell has to say about expository messages. He says, the meaning of the passage is the message of the sermon. Now, we'll see that because as we go through this workflow, a large majority of the workflow is steps and tools for understanding the passage that you're going to preach. And then it continues with steps and tools on putting that together into an actual message. That's really what it's all about. So that's where we're going to go. All right, well, I'm going to jump over to my Logos here. And I'm going to make sure that you can see what I can see. Looks like we're good to go there. Archie says he can't hear me, but he's the only one that has said that. Apparently, I've gotten some other responses from other people, and that makes me think that everybody else is hearing me. So if you can't, if there's others that can't hear me other than Archie, please let me know, because if it's everyone, it might be on my end. But if it's just one or two of you, likely it's on your end. But if it's on my end, then I want to do my best to clear that up. So let me know, okay? All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Notice that I am here on my Logos desktop app. Now, remember, you can use Logos on the desktop app, on the web app, and on the mobile app. You can do unlimited installations on computers and devices. All of your content, resources, and more, it'll all sync across the platform so that you can use one account anywhere and everywhere. Now, keep in mind that you will notice significant differences between the desktop app, the web app, and especially the mobile app, okay? And that's to be expected with any app. But since I'm on the desktop, if you're following along on another app, then you will see differences. Plus, I am using Logos Max, a subscription, the top tier of subscription, and a very robust library. So that's another reason why you may see some differences. Maybe you are on an older version or a lower level or something like that. Don't be alarmed by that. You'll still be able to really learn from all of this, and you'll quite frankly be more educated about what you might gain in an upgrade if you're missing it. So if you're missing anything, keep in mind that you can certainly gain all of that one way or the other. All right, now we want to talk about workflows. So if you're following along with me, notice here in my desktop app, I'm on the dashboard. So I'm just going to come over here to the main toolbar on the left-hand side. You can follow along with me if you want. And we're going to come right here to Guides and Workflows. Go ahead and click on the Guides and Workflows menu to reveal it. Once it comes up, notice we've got some expandable and collapsible sections. Okay, I've got all of mine collapsed, and that's why it popped back up that way. But you can collapse them if you want, or just watch what I'm doing here. Notice we've got started workflows. These are workflows that you start but don't complete. And quite frankly, that's going to happen frequently because a workflow is, again, going to take you step by step by step through a whole process. In this case, preparing an expository message. And you're not going to be able to get it done in an hour or two. In fact, it's likely going to take you days of work, hours of work. And so it's very likely that you won't complete it in one sitting, so you have to come back and pick it up where you left off. That's where the started workflows. If I expand this, you can see I've got 3 that are sort of in process here. I'll go ahead and collapse that. Now I'm going to skip workflows for a moment and come down here to custom workflows. Now we're not going to get into custom workflows, but keep in mind that once you understand workflows better and even get used to using them more, you will think probably, boy, I'd like to do different steps or more steps or do these same steps in different orders. So you're probably going to want to put together your own workflow. Just keep in mind that you can actually create your own workflows, but first you're going to want to understand how they work. Otherwise, you won't be able to do that. So keep that in mind. Now, if I scroll down to the bottom, the very bottom of this menu, I've got completed workflows. Any workflow you complete stays here, okay? Which is great because then it can become an ongoing sort of resource. You can go back to it and see what you've done with it. Now, you can always right-click on any of these here to delete them if you don't want to keep them long-term, okay? Now, let's go back up to workflows. These are all the workflows that you can start and work through. Now, keep in mind, please, that I've got them all and probably some, a lot of them. I got a lot more. So Don't be alarmed when you see my list if you're missing any, because that's very possible. That's going to be likely. But I think you'll hopefully be able to pick up the one that I'm going to take for a spin here to show you what you can do with it. If not, by the way, you can always gain it. So keep watching, because you'll want to learn, and if you ever gain it later. But notice I'm going to go ahead and expand workflows and just give you some examples here. We've got a lot of different kinds of workflows for various different things, like studying your Bible, studying a biblical person, place, or theme topic, putting together expository sermons, topical sermons, devotionals, things like that. In fact, if you scroll down here, I want you to see, there's a lot of different options here, but notice right here, topical sermon prep. Now, we're focusing on expository sermon prep and one particular workflow for that. But I just want you to know that everything we're about to do with a expository sermon prep workflow, you can do with a topical sermon prep. Now, the steps will be different because the process is a little different. The study is a little different. Therefore, the tools will be a little different. But if you're more of a topical preacher or teacher, then after we kind of go through the expository one, come back later and try preparing a topical one with the topical sermon prep workflow. Now, I want to recommend one to you that you might not have, and that's right here. Let me find it here. Here is Brian Chappell's Christ-Centered Sermon Prep. Brian Chappell is the quote we got at the beginning, and he is a former seminary president, homiletics professor, writer, speaker, and we even have mobile ed courses that he has taught on sermon prep. And this is a great workflow. Basically, it's his steps built into Logos and this workflow. We also have Haddon Robinson. That's a classic. If you've taken any homiletics courses, then Haddon Robinson is going to come up probably. And here is his 10 stages. So you can follow that. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to follow the expository sermon prep. This is a little bit more general, designed based upon expert advice, but just kind of titled under expository sermon prep. It's not the exact steps that any particular one individual would give you to follow, but there's going to be overlap. If you try out Brian Chappell's and you try out Haddon Robinson's right here, and you try out the expository sermon prep, if you try those out, you'll see that there's overlap because, again, the expert advice on preparing an expository sermon is going to be there's going to be similarities, right? And that's what you have in these workflows. So let's go ahead and click on the expository sermon prep right here. First thing you're going to do is put in a text. Makes sense, right? Because the meaning of the passage is the message of the sermon, so we've got to get the passage in there first. Now, I'm going to go through some of these things very quickly because I already know what it all says, and you're going to be able to read it later for yourself. So I'm not going to insult your intelligence by reading everything it says here. I'm just going to give you a summary, and you're going to be able to go back to this later and do this over and over again with any text that you want. But for now, if you're following with me, let's go ahead and click on the reference box and type in MT22 for Matthew 22, space 34. And when we do, I want to choose, don't hit enter. I want to choose the great commandment because I want to preach. Imagine I want to preach here on Matthew 22, 34 to 40, the pericope called the Great Commandment. You know this text probably pretty well. I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and it's going to load up the workflow. Now, let me give you some overview of what's going on here so you can see what we have here. Okay, first, notice that we've got steps, okay, and they're collapsed except for the first one. So let's go ahead and collapse the first one as well. All right, and you can see we've got 1, 1.1, 1.2, we've got 2, 2.1, 2.2, 3, and so forth, okay? And if I click right here on the sidebar, I get those steps and sub-steps kind of as an outline that I can navigate through. So we're going to go through some of the steps here and kind of go through it this way. This is the way you would work through it, but you can navigate around if you want to with that sidebar. For now, let's make sure the sidebar is off just so we have plenty of room for our steps. So think of it this way. Do you want to prepare an expository sermon from beginning to end? Okay. Well, the workflow is going to lead you through that. First, you're going to prepare yourself and plan ahead. and all the steps associated with that. Second, you're going to study your passage and all the steps associated with that. Third, you're going to explore the cultural and historical context and some steps with that. Identify important cross-references, steps that that relate to that. And then you're going to consult commentaries. Once you've done all of that, you're ready then probably to be able to create an outline of your text, including a main point, because then you're going to evaluate your passage here and your study to come up with that main point. So you're kind of dealing with an exegetical, you're trying to get to an exegetical outline, sort of an outline in your own words of the flow and argument of the text, and then also in your own words, kind of that main preaching point. Once you study and get to that place, then you're going to be able to start writing it right in Logos as well, where you're going to create a sermon document right in the sermon builder. That's the overarching. Now, let's kind of dig into some of these, just so you can see how it will work, because that's the basics. But you're gonna need to do the labor. You're gonna need to do the work, right? The sermon prep workflow is not to take work out of it. It's not so it can produce a sermon for you and you do nothing, and then you just take it and preach it. No, you shouldn't do that. Okay, none of the tools in Logos are meant to just give you a sermon without any work, without any labor. Really, you need to put the work in it still. The tools in Logos will help you make sure you're doing the steps right, will help you make sure you're using Logos well to do those steps, even give you order, and it's even going to make your sermon flow more efficient. So it's definitely going to help you. It's definitely going to help you to do more with less time. Definitely going to do that. But you're still going to need to put the work in. So, for example, when you're preparing yourself and planning ahead, a lot of different steps here, but I want you to see where it says to reflect, to read your passage several times. Some of these other ones are just kind of like self prep and picking your passage. Some great steps here. Read them, follow them. But right here, eventually, you're going to get to read your passage several times. So let's assume you've already gone through these other steps. You've gotten your text picked out. You come to this step right here. I'm going to expand it, and it tells you to read the selected sermon, the selection for your sermon several times, the passage you've selected. And how do you do that? Well, right here is the text, but this is just a card right in the workflow that will launch you into your Bible in context. So you can either use this button right here, say read in context, or you can click on the more button right here. And either way, when you click on it, it's going to open your Bible to the text. And you can do what it says here. Read your passage over and over and over and over again, because that's going to be part of an expository sermon, very first part, in fact. Then you're going to have these note boxes that are going to have prompts. There's going to be note boxes that are going to have prompts, and you can take notes right in the workflow. And in these boxes, just keep in mind, you can put as many notes in one box as you want, and each box becomes one note and is saved and automatically organized in the note tool. So it says, what aspects of this passage jump out? Well, I can click in here and just say, this seems to be mostly about love. Okay, that's pretty obvious, but just a simple note. And again, I could put an outline in here. I could put any kind of thoughts I want, and it's automatically saving it and organizing it in the notebook, in the note tool. So watch this. If I click on this right here, click on it and choose Open in Notes, look what it's doing. It created a note. Here's the note formatting field. But it also automatically put it in a notebook. It created a notebook for it. So if I come over here to my notebooks, I can see here I've got an expository notebook for this text. Now, I didn't have to open the note tool. And by the way, if you're brand new to the note tool, it might look a little bit intimidating, but it's easy to learn. And you can learn more from our webinars. Certainly, there's also help videos on it and tutorials. But here's the thing. With the workflow, you don't have to go to the note tool or learn the note tool or wonder about the note tool. You can just take notes right here in the workflow. and utilize your notes that way, but it's also being automatically saved and organized in the note tool. So that's one thing. And we'll see these all the way throughout. I just closed the note tool there, just so you know. When you're done with this particular step, what do? You click continue down here at the bottom, and look what it's going to do. Now, we've skipped some steps by way of example, but it's going to check off the step you completed, move you on and expand the next step. And it's even going to show you progress with the overarching step right here. What's the next step here? We've got identify possible themes. The great thing is there's built in this tool called thematic outlines. You'll as you learn more and more about Logos and use some of the guides and things, you'll come across this tool, but you didn't have to hunt it down in the menus and in the guides. If you follow the workflow, you're getting an expert step here. Identify possible themes. Well, how do I do that? Well, here's a tool that will help you do it. So, for example, one of the themes that is a possible theme related to your text is the commands in the New Testament. And if I expand this, it's going to give me an outline of commands in the New Testament with a synopsis, some points, and lots of verses. And the reason this is coming up is because my verse is in this thematic outline. It's pulling from a resource called the Dictionary of Biblical Themes in Logos. And that's why it's pulling from. Now, here's the thing. This is a great way to kind of begin to think about themes that your text is emphasizing maybe, but also this could be an outline that you use for follow-up in small groups and more afterwards. You can literally take this outline right here and just copy it right into Word or into a sermon builder document and more. When you're done with this step, take some notes on it and click on continue, and it's going to move you on, right? And you're eventually going to get to this point in this kind of preparing yourself. Remember, we're under prepare yourself and plan ahead. Right now, establish the sermon's main idea. Now, you'll learn that this is a very, very rough draft of the main idea. And also, you'll learn, if you haven't already, that the experts in expository preaching, or really any kind of preaching, will really advise you that it is wise to have one primary point for your sermon that people can kind of go away with, and everything else in the sermon proves it, advances it, argues it, develops it, whatever it might be. So right now you've read the passage over and over and over again. You've identified some possible themes. Now you probably are ready to at least take a stab at coming up with, what the primary where the passage communicates the good news, or a one sentence main point based on the truth, something like that. It's going to be saved to your notes and so forth. But remember, this is going to be just a rough draft because you're going to amend this later. Why? Well, because you really haven't studied the passage in depth. I just collapsed that section. I didn't complete it because I want to move on to study your passage and just show you some of these. Now you're going to dig into, and you've probably taken several hours just reading your passage through and identifying possible themes. And this whole first step and all that's here, you've probably already spent a good amount of time kind of understanding this text and coming up with an overarching perspective of it. But now you're going to dig in. Okay. And some of the steps here that will that are included here, for example, is identifying the basic facts of your passage. In other words, what book is your passage in? Who wrote the book? Why'd they write it? Who'd they write it to? When did they write it? Things like that. The background. What's the outline of the book? How does your text fit into the overarching, flow of the book? That's a lot of kind of basic facts that you kind of want to know as context for that individual text. So notice right here, if you expand this, you're going to learn from this. Now, remember, what you've got are instructions and additional instructions. Okay, we didn't really dig into that up here too much, but you'll see these instructions and additional instructions. Why do I say additional instructions? Because this more button right here kind of expands on what the main instructions are. And the great thing about that is that the next time you come through this workflow, because you'll probably use it over and over again, for different texts and different sermons, as you come through the next time, you might not need the more section because you already know what to do. You're just being reminded about the main step, and then you're ready to do it. So I like these lesson more because I can do a workflow, for my maybe 10th time if I want to, and I don't have to expand them more because I've been through it enough. But just remember, the first couple times you go through, it's like the workflow is teaching you. You're really not learning from me. Okay, you're not learning how to do an expository sermon from me. It's a good thing because I'm not the expert, right? You're learning how to do an expository workflow, an expository sermon, from the workflow. It's the expert. It's been designed by expert advice. And here's the great thing. After the webinar, you don't even have to, you can rewatch the webinar, but really you won't have to. Just use the workflow. It's going to teach you each step along the way. Okay? So notice here, under more, to identify the basics of your passage, one of the tools it's going to recommend, and the one that I highly recommend you learn how to use is the Factbook right here. The Factbook. Okay? Because you can click on this right here. It's going to open up the Factbook, and the Factbook is like a research assistant for your library, giving you lots of information, links, data sets, and more to understand whatever it is you're studying. Anything in Logos. It could be a passage, it could be a topic, it could be a person, it could be a thing, a theme, a historical event, anything. So, for example, I can just type in my passage here. I'm going to do MT 22 space 34. And I'm going to choose the Great Commandment. Same text we chose over here. Choose the Great Commandment. And this is going to give me a lot of information. Of course, it's going to give me the passage, but it's also going to give me commentaries and data sets for my text related to the people, places, and things in it, biblical events that it fits into, and more. A lot of great things here for my passage specifically. Now, just back out the numbers here. So click right here at the end and just back out the numbers, and let's see what the book of Matthew is all about. So I just put in Matthew in the Factbook, choose gospel. I want to look for that little red ribbon. And there's going to be something unique in this. Whenever you do a book of the Bible search in Factbook, I'm going to click it and show you what you get uniquely. A lot of same things, but if you scroll down, watch here. I'm going to keep scrolling here until here it is. Here it is, the Bible Book Guide. I love this because it basically categorizes links to the information that you want to have about the book of Matthew by way of context for the study of your text. For example, if you expand background here and you want to learn more about the recipients of the Gospel of Matthew, we can expand more here. And just notice right here in the Holman Concise Bible Commentary, or even the Holman Bible Handbook. Now, this is all resources in my library. So you have the better your library, the better your Logos. It's just that simple. And I'm never going to sit down and just read from cover to cover the Holman Bible Handbook. I'm probably not going to do that, but boy, I want it when I need it. And so thankfully I've got it right here, and I can learn more about the recipients. I'm going to click on recipients right here. It's going to open up the article, and here is some factual information from the Holman Bible Handbook on the recipients of the Gospel of Matthew. That's going to be helpful for me to understand my text a little bit better. Just one example. Now I'm going to close out that Holman Bible Handbook, and I'm going to come over here and close out the Factbook. Here's the point, okay? When to use the Factbook, how to get to the Factbook, why I'm using the Factbook, it all comes up in the step. I just follow the steps. I'll take some, some overarching information here. I might, after my research here, I might, put down who wrote the book, when they wrote the book, why they wrote the book, who they wrote the book to, all kinds of notes that I'll take here, saved in my notebook, ready to go. I'll click on continue, and I'm done with that step. Moves me on to the next step, which is read the passage in original language. Now, there's some help on that in the more section if you can do that. But if not, you might just go right on to read your passage closely and carefully. And when you get to this step, it's going to bring you to another tool. Again, I'm hoping you're seeing the pattern here, because there's no way in 30 to 40 minutes, I can cover the whole workflow, but I don't have to, because all you have to do is get the idea that basically I'll follow the workflow step by step and then click on the tool that Logos suggests for doing the step. For example, to read the passage closely and carefully, recommended right here is the Compare Bible Versions in the text comparison tool. If I click on that, you know what's going to open? The text comparison tool. So I can actually read my text alongside of other texts, Bible versions. You can come up here and change the Bible versions if you want. I usually like to use my top Bibles. Those are the ones I've prioritized. So we can make some observations here, take some notes, follow the prompts. And again, we're just reading our text more and more carefully. I'll click on continue to finish that step, and it moves me on to examine literary types. Now, I'm going to collapse this, because literary types, boundaries of the passage, propositional outlines, those are some advanced tools that you're going to want to learn as you go along. But what's the point we're doing here? This is all part of studying the text, getting an understanding of the genre, getting an understanding of where I should start and stop in my study with the boundaries. Propositional outlines will turn your text into a sort of outlined text to kind of better identify the parts and the flow, And then eventually you're going to get to identify important words. Okay? Word study. That's going to be a significant part of understanding a passage. Great thing is, if you expand this and you have a high enough level in Logos, then you'll have this important words tool that launches you into word study. And the great thing is, if you don't know Greek, it doesn't matter. Or if you're in the Old Testament, you don't know Hebrew or Aramaic, it doesn't matter, because it's telling you right here what to look at. I've got commandment. That's a word in my text. I can expand the drop-down arrow right here and see it's 3 times in my text. I noticed that this is a blue hyperlink for the Greek word. Maybe I've never seen that Greek word before in my life. I don't know how to say it. I don't know how to identify it, but I know it is the Greek word for commandment here, 3 times in my text. And when I hover, it gives me a pop-up letting me know, hey, there's more information on this you might want to look at. I'll click on that. It's going to open up one of the most useful tools, popular tools for word study in Logos, called the Bible Word Study Tool. If you've never come across it, I recommend that you learn more about it. Now, again, I know that especially if you're new to Logos, this can be a lot. But really, I'm trying to give you kind of a gloss, because you're going to be able to dig deep, because you've got the workflow that you can take away with you. You can or any of the workflows. And you can do the same thing with any workflow, by the way. So that's another tool that you'll be able to be pointed to in this process. I'm done identifying words. I'm taking all kinds of notes. I might create a whole list of these words and definitions in this note. It's automatically being saved and organized in my sermon notebook for this. Click on continue, and it moves me on to the next step. Look what it's doing here, moving me on here to explore the historical context and so forth. Okay. Now, I'm going to let you kind of work through that. I will show you that with a lot of these, what you're going to get is, again, access to the fact book. Because notice it says identify things and objects. And if I expand that, one of the things that our text kind of alludes to is Scripture. And notice that there's a fact book report on that. If I click on Scripture right here, it's bringing up the fact book. And isn't this great? Here's what we've got. Like the workflow is telling you, hey, if you're studying a text to prepare to preach the text, there are some things that you're going to want to kind of make sure you know about. And if they're in the list here under biblical things or people or places, you're going to have the workflow changes depending on the text that you're in. It'll modify some, because there's some texts that need further study on certain things. And so if you dig in with this, okay, right here, it's going to take you to the fact book. And here's the thing. The research assistant came to my rescue again. I didn't have to go to my library and look up one book at a time and look up the theme in that book and all. No, I didn't have to do any of that. My fact book took away dozens of hours looking things up and just gave me a report with all kinds of categories and data sets and links to resources and more. I'm going to go ahead and close the fact book. So you see my point? Identifying cross-references, one of the best tools you'll come across in this right here is under biblical, identify biblical cross-references. And right here, it's the important passages section. Again, you're gonna dig in. You're gonna read the instructions. You're gonna read the more instructions. But I'm telling you, notice this is a great tool. I use this tool all the time, even when I'm not using a workflow. But here's the thing: if you didn't know about it, or you didn't know when to use it, the workflow says, hey, if you're going to preach on this text, you got to understand the text. If you're going to understand this text, you should understand important cross-references to this text. Here is a tool in Logos that you can use for that, important passages. So right here, I know that Leviticus 19:18 is one of the most important cross-references that I need to consider with my text. If I preach my text and never look at this text, I may not have gone as far as I should have. Okay? And the reason is because it falls into the category of a New Testament use of the Old Testament. So this is a New Testament text that references the Old Testament, Leviticus 19:18. All right? So another more great tools that I'm coming across here. And then look what I'm coming to now. Consult commentaries. And if I expand this, I'm just going to tell you right now, here's what this does. It basically gives you access to all of your commentaries right here, nicely and neatly, that have anything to say about your text. You don't have to go to your library and pull one off, look it up. No, you don't have to go. I haven't gone to my library at all yet. In fact, if I'm using the workflow, I might never go to my library. I don't have to, because the workflow gives me the tools and the resources that I need at that particular step. And have you noticed that we haven't consulted commentaries yet? I mean, this just proves to you that this is in tune with common scholarly wisdom and advice, because the scholars will tell you, hey, you should learn a lot about your text before you consult the commentaries. You don't want to just go to the commentaries out the gate, right? You want to kind of get an understanding of your text for yourself first as best you can, and then go to the commentaries for confirmation, clarification, even correction. That's what I do. And I think that's a great consideration there. But the workflow is helping me do that. I didn't have to know that. I didn't even have to know how to get to my commentaries for this passage. They're right here. Now you can sort them in a couple of different ways. And by the way, I'm just going to make one little quick comment here before we move on. And that is, prioritization of your resources is very important. If you've not learned how to prioritize your resources, please let me know. Maybe in the Q&A time, or email me, because that's important. It's not something you do every time you go into Logos, but it is something that you take advantage of most times you go into Logos. In fact, when I have my commentary sorted by way of priority here, all of my go-tos, because I prioritize them, are at the top. If I click on more right here, I've got all kinds of commentaries on this text. But my favorites, my go-tos, are at the top, so I don't have to go far. Okay, when I'm done with this step, I'm going to click on continue. It's going to move me on to the next step, which I'm going to kind of collapse here and just highlight here and emphasize, just kind of summarize. Here's the thing. Sometimes these steps will point you to Logos tools to use for the step. Sometimes they don't, because they're more reflection type. So for example, creating, kind of evaluating outlines and creating an exegetical outline. Now, the evaluating outlines will take you to potential outlines in your library. But to create your own, you're just kind of thinking through it and taking notes. And that'll eventually lead you to coming up to a sermon, the sermon's main preaching point. See, you're going to determine the passage main point, and you're going to review the sermon's main preaching point. Well, didn't we already do that up above? Remember, I told you it was a rough draft. I mean, really, it's great because, and I love this because I think that this is a big deal when you're trying to preach an expository sermon, or any sermon for that matter. Coming up with that main, John Stott calls it, I think, the dominant thought. I like that. The dominant thought. Coming up with that dominant thought is so important. Starting off with a rough draft, studying the passage, and then modifying that, maybe even completely changing it. That process is going to help you a lot, really. And once you've got sort of an exegetical outline and a main point, then you're probably going to want to start writing your notes, right? And you can do that. Notice we're going to say, see here, create a sermon document. We'll expand that, and that's going to take us to the sermon editor. That's just another name for the sermon builder. Okay, so that's something important because I think we've kept the word sermon editor because that's what people have known for so very long. But for the last, probably, a good amount of years, it's really been called the sermon builder. So just know that sermon editor and sermon builder are synonymous. Either way, it's a tool that's going to help you prepare your manuscript or outline or whatever you use. Listen, I know you might be working in Word. You might be working in Google Docs or wherever else. I switched from Word, where I was doing all my sermons for years, to the sermon builder, and I'll never go back. I love it. I had to adjust. There are some things that I had to change, do differently. But the sermon builder is far better, really, for being able to automatically save and organize your sermons and lessons in the sermon manager and so forth. Now, here's the thing. Okay, we got to kind of conclude here and get to questions. Now, I do a whole webinar on the sermon builder. I do another webinar on the sermon manager. So watch for those sermon builder and sermon manager webinars. In fact, you can go to my page and see the next time I'll be doing those. You can send me emails about that. I'm happy to help you with that. But the sermon builder you can do either outlines or manuscripts, no matter what kind of a preacher you are. If you're more of an outliner or more of a manuscript writer where you write it word for word, you can do that right in Logos, right here with the sermon editor, right with the sermon builder, same thing. And it'll automatically save and organize your sermons right in the sermon manager. And so keep that in mind. Check out my other webinars for that. But that's basically what I'm going to show you. I think you can take it from here. One last thing now that I remember, illustrations. You're going to want to add illustrations. I love this. Again, the workflow takes you where you need to go. You're probably thinking, boy, I need some illustrations. How do I get illustrations out of Logos? If you have illustration books in Logos, you don't want to have to take hours looking things up. So right here, you can expand this, and it's going to give you a tool. I'll just leave you with this. Learn more about this illustration tool. By the way, I do a whole webinar on finding illustrations in Logos. It's called Illustrate to Illuminate. And I go over this tool and in more depth. So I think I think I've gotten you, just like I promised, I think I've gotten you started with the expository sermon prep workflow. You're going to be able to come back later and read. You're going to love reading this stuff. You're going to love it. I mean, I think if you're new to sermon prep, or if you've been around sermon prep for a while, you might need some reminders. And if you're new, man, you're going to learn a lot from these workflows. I'm going to come down here to the bottom left and close all. I want to encourage you to go to the Help Center as well. Right here in the Help Center is where you can go after the webinar to learn more, to get questions answered. You can do an AI-assisted search. You can click on one of the options here, and it's going to launch you into all things Logos support, whether online or built in. So don't forget about this, because next time you have a thought about learning something or a question, come here, try it here. I think you're gonna be helped by that. Also, before you leave, please don't forget to fill out the survey. That's going to be your way to help me serve you better in the future. And it is only going to take you a minute or less. But remember, every time you give us a positive survey response, you are supporting our webinar agenda. So please help us to continue to do this for you. Now, I popped it up in front of you there so that it would be easy to get to. So do me a big favor and get that started. You can still stick around for questions. We'll see if we've got any here. And I'm going to grab a quick drink, take a brief pause while you're filling out or starting that survey. Okay, hold on one moment, please. All right, thanks so much for your patience there. Also want to mention that I do a live Q&A session called Logos Office Hours, along with all of my other regularly scheduled live trainings. And you can learn more about all of them at logos.com/Sean Grubb. Again, that's logos.com/Sean Grubb. So find that page, bookmark it, take a picture here or a screenshot or whatever, and go back to that later. If you want to learn more from me, visit logos.com/Sean Grubb. And if you're not on subscriptions, then I can tell you that you're missing out. Okay, you really are. Logos and subscriptions is by far the best Logos ever. It's more powerful for a lot of reasons, but Smart Search alone is worth the subscription. It is amazing. Just use natural language. It's just like doing a Google search, only better because it's just in your library. Also, it's more affordable because you can have the same level of Logos that I do. I have Max, the top tier, with no missing features. No, nothing missing. Okay. And you can have that today, and it's not going to cost you thousands or even hundreds of dollars up front like it used to. It's just going to be a low monthly subscription fee. And the best way for you to get the best price is to talk to our experts at the number on your screen. I know you can do things online. I know that you can even maybe find the same price, but you're going to be certain you're going to make a better informed decision by talking to our experts at 888-510-8262 today. You can even use that same number to call about other resources, and I highly recommend this mobile ed course. If you are new to expository preaching or preaching even in general, or you've been around a while and you need a refresher, then this is a seminary level course that you can purchase and have right in Logos forever. Videos and activities. And again, this is by Brian Chappell. Highly recommend this. I went through this. It is phenomenal. All right. Well, that's what I wanted to mention. If you want to stick around for questions, great. If not, hey, it's been an honor to be a part of your Logos learning process. Hope to see you next time. Thanks for being here. All right, Nicholas asks, can you do the same for Bible study? I'm assuming you mean, can you do a workflow for Bible study? The answer is yes. Okay. So for example, guides and workflows right here. And here's our workflows. Now we chose the expository sermon prep workflow right here, but look, we've got basic Bible study. All right. We've got inductive Bible study. This is the one I recommend here. In fact, learning how to do inductive Bible study is going to help you with any kind of Bible study. Like if you're preaching or teaching, I know I've been preaching for, preached for years. So, doing inductive Bible study is at the core of most of those, sermon prep, lesson prep, and more. If it's Bible centered, you got passage exegesis right here. So yeah, there's workflows. Now remember, you might not have all the workflows I have, but if you upgrade and get up to max, then you will have them all. But anyways, so in answer to your question, Nicholas, yes, you can do the same for Bible study. Eric, how do we access a recording of the webinar to review the material? You will automatically receive a recording. Good question, Eric. Mentioned it at the beginning quickly, so maybe you weren't here, but that's okay. You will automatically receive a recording at the email that you registered from. All right, Lance, how do I get the box? What would you like to do today on my dashboard? If you don't have it, try this. Lance, watch. If you don't have it, try this. Come over here to the plus button right here. Notice the plus button right here. Click on that. Make sure that Get Started Wizard is checked on. See, if I check it off, it's gone. If I check it on, it comes back. Okay, you can even rearrange it by clicking and holding and dragging. Okay. Now, I do think that this is a subscription feature, but don't quote me on that. So if you don't have the checkbox for it, that might be why. But check that out. See if that's going to work for you. I'd appreciate it too if you quickly respond, because if it works for you, then we're good to go. But if it didn't work for you, then I might need to take you offline and have you email me. We can maybe go from there to discover that more. But try that out. Again, Lance, it's right up here, plus button. You're on the dashboard. Make sure your dashboard, see, I can turn my dashboard off. Click to turn my dashboard on. So make sure your dashboard is on. Come over here to the plus button. Make sure Get Started Wizard is checked on. Once it's there, you can even click and hold and drag and rearrange. Oh, so Lance says, thanks, I'll look for the subscription. Okay, so apparently you don't, you're saying you don't have it. So here's what you do with that. Call this number right here. Okay, now I know you can go online, but you're going to be able to just get quicker information and more certain information, and you're not going to be forced to make any kind of a decision. But the best way to make the decision is to have an expert talk to you about that, and you can do that at the number on the screen there. Okay. All right. Well, it looks like I've got all the questions answered at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and log off. Hey, thanks so much for being here today. Really appreciate it. If you'd like to learn more from me, don't forget that you can visit logos.com/Sean Grubb for my other live trainings. And don't forget to fill out that survey on your way out, because that's going to be your way to help us continue this ministry to you. Hey, I'll look forward to seeing you another time. Thanks for being here today. Godspeed.